hey, we got a whole group of people here that feel that they're not being heard because these are the metrics that we're looking at. This is what we're seeing. We don't see a lot of clicks on that website. We don't see a lot of likes, or we don't see.
Mhm.
So we do need to do a better job of how we advocate. Like you say, everybody complains about services, but who are we complaining to? Are we complaining to the right people? And are we offering solutions with that?
Wow, guys, can you believe it? We're already over 20 episodes into Nick Speaks, but here's the truth. I couldn't have done it alone. The amazing team at Goodnight Podcasting Solutions has been with me every step of the way, from those early strategy sessions all the way to editing, promotion, and even helping me land guests. They've made it so all I have to do is show up, record, and focus on delivering the message. Kyle at Goodnight Podcasting Solutions tailors everything to your unique needs and is so creative to give you what you're looking for. But one thing's for sure, he gives 110% to help you create an incredible podcast. So if you've ever thought about starting your own podcast, now's the time. Hit the link in the show notes, set up a strategy session with Kyle, and get ready to take your podcast to the next level. Trust me, you won't regret it.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the newest installment of the Nick Speaks podcast, the podcast dedicated to the disabled community, where we speak up, speak out, and speak loud about the issues that matter to the disabled the most. You guys, I have a special guest today, but before we get to them, I want to take a minute to do a couple housekeeping notes. First of all, if you want to come on the show, I would love to have you on the show. Whether you're a person with a disability like myself, I want to hear about your life experience and things that you go through on a day-to-day basis and what you contribute to society. Whether you work in the disabled field, such as my guest today, I want to hear from you, whether you're a case manager, county superintendent, any of that. I want to hear from you, and I want to talk about the dirt in the system. I'm just going to be quite frank with you there. I'll try not to lose. I'll try not to help you lose your job, but I'm not going to make any promises. So if you want to be on my show, email me at nickspeaksofficial@gmail.com and make sure that you put "be a podcast guest" in the subject line. Also, I want to make sure to know that you can also use that email address for me to be a podcast guest or a public speaker at your event. So if you want to do any of those three things, email me at nickspeaksofficial@gmail.com. Now, one more thing before I get into our wonderful guest is, you guys, last week I came out with a book, and I am along at 11 other authors. It's called Trailblazing and Transforming. That's the part of the title that I remember, because God bless our head author, the title's way too damn long for me to remember. But if you want to get it, it's on Amazon, on Kindle, and in paperback, and we'll put it in the show notes. You're going to hear 12 authors, entrepreneurial stories, our life stories, and what we've had to go through to get where we are. So make sure to pick up your copy of Trailblazing and Transforming today. Now to our guest. You guys, I've known this guy for the past several years that I've been in the state of Ohio. I've been in the state of Ohio for 10 years this July, and I would say that I know this guy probably for about the first 5 or 6 that I've been in the state of Ohio. He's been in our system, disability system, for nearly 30 years, 27 to be exact. and I'm so happy to have him. If you guys want to know something interesting about our caregiving system, you're going to want to stay tuned today. You guys, please help me welcome Kraig Walker to the program. Kraig, welcome. I'm so glad you're here.
Thanks. It's great to be here too. I thought you wanted me to sing on the show, but whatever.
Yeah, well, we can do that. I may just have my producer do some extra editing and we'll put bloopers in or something.
There you go. That would be cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Craig, why don't you tell our Nick Speaks viewers a little bit about you and how you got in the system because it's very, very unique. I love how I didn't find out until yesterday during our pre call how you started out, and I thought it was very, very unique. So, why don't you get into that and then we'll just jump in and have some fun?
Sounds good. Well, currently I'm the vice president of advocacy with the ARC of Ohio, and I'm involved with People First of Ohio as the director. That was something that I got involved with pretty much at the beginning of my career, my first few years in this field. But we were talking a little bit yesterday about this. I fell into the field, and
Yeah.
it's interesting. I know that, yeah, a lot of people that have been in it for a long time will tell you either they had a or they stumbled into the field or fell into the field and didn't mean to be here. Um, so I was a radio announcer. My first paying job at 16 years old was a radio announcer for a local radio. I, I was going to different radio stations, and one that I was in, I started doing radio ads. And I noticed that a lot of people were advertising for help wanted positions in the newspapers, and nobody seemed to be doing that in radio. So I created a program. It was called the WVNU Job Line at the time, and we would sell radio ads for positions that were open in the community. And one of the organizations that I spoke with to advertise was Voca. And I don't know if anybody remembers Voca. It sold out years ago to ResCare. And I got them to advertise some positions that were open for direct support professionals, or what we call in the field DSPs. So I was running a special, like a buy one, get one free type thing. And they said, well, nobody will want this position that would listen to the radio. They won't stumble. Well, it's free anyway. Just go ahead and post it. You never know. And it was a position that required a degree, at least a bachelor's degree. And it was related to the field that I had my bachelor's degree in. And I thought, well, sounds interesting. Let's try. And I applied, learned a little bit more about the company and about what it is to have a home, an intermediate care facility. And it really intrigued me. They hired me. So I was what is known as the Q. And in our field, that's like a clinical manager over a home. And that's how I fell into the field. And then a superintendent who was a friend of mine, he asked me to come over to the county board of DD, created a position for me, and I just fell in love with it and just had to stay in the field. And then, of course, became uh, involved in the advocacy movement, and that really, really took off. And that I was very passionate about. And I'm still here today. And you say almost 30 years. That really makes me feel old. 27 sounds better than 30.
Well, I'm 35, so
Well, yeah, just rub it in, rub it in. I'm a little
yes,
older
yeah.
than 35. Not a lot, but in my mind, I'm still 20. I guess maybe maturity wise, probably around 6, 7 years old. Just
Well,
saying. Just
we
saying.
we do have a lot of fun together. I don't know. I haven't spent that much time with you. I think 6 and 7 year olds are sometimes annoying. So maybe it's it. Maybe it's
Uh, that describes me.
yeah. Well, okay.
But
So
I've been involved in this field in many different aspects. So in the residential setting, I've done that. Would When I went over to the county board, we had a unit that basically was mostly people with profound disabilities, a lot of medical needs.
right,
I would do direct care and work in what we called programming back that time, teaching skills, basic skills. Um, so it's been a journey that kind of led me into being the adult services director, which led me into helping the county board separate those services several years ago and making the nonprofit stable so that they could be on their own. And and then led me into community integration. So it's been a wide range. I've served as a county board superintendent previously, so I've
yeah.
been in multiple different positions and have enjoyed every one of them.
So you've been a county board superintendent.
Mhm.
And so you've been on both sides of the aisle where they say, well, we need to save money here, but we need these services here. So how did that affect? You were there for a year. How did that affect your decision making as a county board superintendent? Because you've been on both sides. You know what cuts can
Right.
do.
So first and foremost, I believe what drove me, and maybe it wasn't very popular with everyone, but what drove me is you are as a superintendent, you are the one who is responsible for ensuring that the local support and the tax dollars are being used wisely. So yeah, you're going to look at your physical location. I always believed that it was unnecessary to build buildings and to um, have extravagant offices because that's not really when somebody goes to the polls to vote for services for people with disabilities in a local tax levy. That's really not what they're voting for. They're not voting for me to have a nice new desk. Although a better office chair would have been great, I didn't need one because I had an office chair. You
Yeah.
know, I had a hand-me-down office chair, and that was fine with me. So looking at the small things it leads into large things. So we have to be responsible to the taxpayers, to all the stakeholders. So there's multiple stakeholders when you're leading an organization like that. There's the county commissioners, there's the county auditor,
Hmm.
there's the county recorder. There's all of these different things in play where you have to have these relationships. We had to build relationships with the local school districts, with the Career Technical Center, with the local community college, with the mental health board. There were multiple connections that had to be made there, and with local businesses. But most importantly, why are we there? We're there for people with developmental disabilities and we're there to provide services. So that was my highest priority, and that's what drove my decisions. What is expected? You know, is transportation horrible? Then that's where our dollars need to be focused on. Is housing an issue? That's where our dollars need to be focused on. So there's a lot of factors in there because you know you're always going to have somebody that complains that doesn't like the way you're spending it. But ultimately, it's not my money.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
not my life. I'm not the one that struggles to find a specialist within 50 miles of my home. So I served in a rural area, and sometimes we were going beyond 50 miles to find the specialized services that someone needed.
Right.
Housing issues were very difficult, especially for multi-system youth, and that's a problem in all 88 of our Ohio counties. Um, just not a lot of services there for kids that are involved in multiple systems. So we really need to look at that. We're talking about how to spend tax dollars and looking at the state budget. More services need to be there because I know, you've got a 15-year-old that has been in trouble 64 times in 1 week, has been in the emergency room, has been arrested 3 or 4 times. Things aren't working
My
at
God.
school,
Yeah.
things aren't working at home. I may have exaggerated a bit, but um, there are those real issues. And I know with one gentleman that we tried to find a good therapeutic place for that gentleman, and he was underage. We were looking as far away as Alaska. There's just not a lot of services uh, that are specialized with good quality people. And you and I kind of talked about that a little bit about the direct support professional crisis and just not a lot of people coming into the field. Nick,
Right.
you and I were speaking about how when I got into this 27 years ago, I had to go through a certification process. I
Mm-hmm.
had multiple classes to take, and we've taken that educational piece out. We're not expecting degreed positions anymore. We're not expecting, and we've changed that with county board certification, with provider certification. All of that has changed as to where now, as a result of the pandemic and a bigger crisis of getting people in the field, we said, hey, we need people just to show up. So we took away a high school diploma or a GED, and now a 16 or 17-year-old can be hired to work with someone.
And that is, to me, that's, I mean, I get it that we need bodies, but to me that's terrible because you're dealing with, you know, people that have track lifts. For me, I have a track lift that gets me in and out of my chair. And for some of those people, just putting them in the position and saying, okay, figure it out, that might
Well,
work okay for somebody
right.
who's able to express this is how you do it. But if somebody's
Well,
not verbal,
they're
yeah,
limited. Yes, they're limited in scope of what they can do at that age. So they can't provide toileting needs or things like that for liability purposes. But
so what do
it's
they do? Just
still,
recreation services
they
then? Get
can
them in the
they can
community?
do recreation. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
do some fun stuff. Help with possibly meal prep and um,
God, don't get
learning.
started there. Meal
With
prep.
me, that's probably the most important thing is my meals.
Yes, yes, that's the most important thing too. And one of the things that I struggle with as a client is, we have a heavy immigrant population here in Columbus, and a lot of them are not acclimated to the food scene and to American food. A lot of them are, they can go all day and eat fufu and jollof and be okay. Well, I like jollof. I've had it many times, but it's not something I want to live off of. So
Right.
I feel like, you know, training these, immigrants to come in and do things, I think one of the things needs to be cooking, better English skills. I mean, because if you're dealing with somebody that has trouble talking already, you need to make sure that the person they're working with can get around their barrier and that person not have as much of a barrier to communicate with them. I want to back up. Something you said really struck me, and it's something that I struggle with as a client, and I've heard a lot from my case manager and case managers in the past. What I love that you said was, it is not my money.
Exactly.
It is not my money to spend. It is not my money to hoard, in a sense. And what I have found is that when it comes to the services with people with disabilities, is that I've never seen a government who wants to be so fiscally responsible when it comes to people with disabilities. And they'll toe the line and say, "Oh no, we got to be fiscally responsible." And then, I struggle to get the services I need because they're so focused on being fiscally responsible all of a sudden, and
Well,
so it's just
that's
really
a good point.
annoying.
Yeah, and I think that you made a great statement there. You said what I need, what
Yeah,
I need. And wants and needs are two totally different things. I may want to go on a 3-month vacation. Do I need one? Do I need to go around the world and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars? Or do I need to get away for a break for a little bit and just sit on a beach? And you know what I mean? Um, so my wants and needs, I want to retire with probably $50 million so I don't have to worry about that. But do I need that? I don't. So that's also something that, we have to look at. When I say it's not my money, it's not. It is put forth for a specific purpose, and it's not to fulfill all of our wants, but the expectation is, what do we need? Do we need recreational things? And some people say absolutely not. For our mental health, we need recreational opportunities. We need
yes,
socialization. We need to be in the community, integrated in the community, not just living in a house in a community, but being a true part of that community.
right,
Where, hey, there's a bowling league on Tuesday nights. Well, hey, let's go be a part of that bowling league. I don't know. It's each community is different. Um,
right,
there's a need for my parents to go out and eat. They get to see their friends. They get to see people in the community. There's a need there. It's not just a want. And I think a lot of times people say, "Oh, they just want to get out of the house and not eat something that's cooked." But there's a need there. There's a need for that socialization. And I
yep,
think that a lot of times people look at tax dollars and say, "Well, that's not a need, that's a want." It is a need. It is a need for us to be together, to have friends, to have meaningful relationships outside of the four walls we live in. And I think that's a need for many, many people that they don't even see. It's important.
yeah. One of the things I hate hearing, and I've heard it a lot, our individual options waiver has 9 ranges,
Mhm.
and I'm at the top. I'm at range 9. I'm all the way up here.
Well, congratulations.
And so, yeah. And so, you know, supposedly there's a $500,000 cap there. Now, I talked to a guy who was supposedly in the process of, within the process of writing the IO waiver, and he said, there's really no cap there, blah, blah, blah. And one of the things I hear all the time, as if I'm trying to spend $500,000, is just because you have access to $500,000 doesn't mean you get to spend the $500,000. Okay, I get that. But if you're going to approve me for that much money, why wouldn't we make sure that I have the best quality of life possible. That doesn't mean go out and buy souped up power chairs and and put nitrogen on every one of them. And
You have a need for that.
yeah,
Are you going to be involved in some type of race where you might need?
yeah, yeah. But it's just so how do we determine want versus need? Because there are so many needs that people with disabilities have. We deserve to have relationships and different things and go to the mall. Not that the waiver pays to go to the mall, but you know what I mean. I mean, we have our own finances, as meager as they may be. But I mean, we need transportation to be able to go to the movies. Some would say that Medicaid waivers shouldn't pay for transportation to go to the movies or transportation to go out on a date or what have you. And so are we just supposed to sit inside our four walls and rot? I don't think so. So how do we manage all this enchilada of money?
So it is difficult determining what are the needs, and they have a needs assessment for your waiver. And when you go through there, you go through each category, and that determines your level, right?
Right.
So I know that there are a lot of people that say you don't need to go to the movies, you don't need to do this, and I would say, okay, I don't need to go to the movies 3 times a day. That may be a want, but that's not a need. But I do need socialization. So we have to get to the point where we look at it, and this is an issue. It's um, it's very difficult to determine subjective, objective. Am I really, really viewing this like everybody else would? So you have 88 counties. You have 88 different ways of looking at it because there's 88 different boards. And within those counties, you have case managers that all have different backgrounds and they may view it differently. So when you advocate for those things that you need to tell why. Why do I need to go to the movies? Why do I need to get out of these four walls? Because if you're someone like me that hasn't lived that, you really can't understand what it's like. And Nick, I don't know if you've ever shared this on your podcast, but you told a story and I had you tell it at the state house. You're like, really, should I add that into it? But
Yeah.
the time that you needed to go to McDonald's, and everybody was like, oh my gosh, they thought it was hilarious. But that's an example there. You were wanting to get something to eat and were so frustrated that nobody was there multiple times to even help you get out, that you took off on your own, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, in that particular situation, I had the transportation. It was just a staff member who said, I don't feel like doing it. I have to clean the house for your roommates. The McDonald's was right around the corner, Craig. We could have been back in 10 minutes.
Exactly.
An issue of that's another issue that we have with caregivers, and a lot of people criticize me for being so rough on caregivers. The problem is I've had more bad caregivers than I've had good, unfortunately. It's like trying to find a needle in the haystack. And people are saying, well, if you pay us better, we pay them 18 here in Ohio. And like we talked about yesterday, if you pay them 18, they're going to want 20. If you pay them 20, they're going to want 25. If you pay them 30, they're going to want 35. It comes to a point where I tell caregivers all the time, you have to be able to sit down and say, what am I doing this for? Am I doing this
Exactly.
to bring in a paycheck? That's not very much, but I'm going to influence somebody's life at the end of the day. And another thing that really irritates me is that caregivers talk about how little they get paid. but you can barely get them to show up to work 2 to 3 times a week.
Right.
And so I don't think it's fair to talk about how little you get paid and then you call off 3 days out of 5 because you just don't want to go in and sit with somebody for 8 hours.
Right.
Newsflash, you don't have to sit there for 8 hours. Figure out something to do. This is your
And like,
opportunity to give somebody a life that they wouldn't have if it wasn't
right.
for you.
And it's like you and I talked about yesterday. It's the difference in seeing a job versus a career path. Um, Something that you feel like gives you purpose in life. I think that, for people to do well in this field and to have longevity, to stay in the field, is to realize the importance of what supports you're giving. So making that a career, saying, I want to be here. And that's what I told you yesterday. I want to know from someone, are you going to be, if they want to come into this field and start right away, are you visioning, are you creating a vision in your mind that you're going to be here 30 years from now? Or is this just because I need a paycheck? Because we've got a lot of folks that may just need a paycheck, but there again, it's that career path that I was sharing with you. Um, if we can see that we can stay in this field, and I could have chosen several different fields to get into that have made a lot more money. But I told somebody one day, I said I kind of feel guilty sometimes because for the past 27 years, I've had a job that makes me happy every day, even on the bad days. So find something to smile about. There's funny moments. There's, like your story about going to McDonald's by yourself and getting pulled over by the cops in your chair. I thought
Yeah,
that was hilarious. Some people were like, "Oh my," and you and I were laughing about it. Um, there are moments there that just it's life.
yeah,
You've got to say, hey, this is cool. And I'm meeting so many cool friends. I have made so many friends in this field. When I go to a conference, it's like a reunion,
yeah,
and the Synergy Conference or the ARC National Convention, um, or the Ohio Association of County Boards when they have their conferences. It's just really neat to make those connections. And you and I
yeah,
have those connections all over the state of Ohio, different people from all walks of life, varying disabilities, and it's a unique mosaic that it's your life really changes when you get in this field and actually put something into it.
yeah. And it's been wonderful because I've been in the state of Ohio, like I said at the beginning of the program, for 10 years. It'll be 10 years this July. And it really has changed my life. I mean, even people here in Ohio were telling me, Nick, you're going to have to be with roommates for, ever pretty much. And you're not going to be able to have your own apartment because the county doesn't want to pay, somebody for 24/7 staff and then for your own apartment on top of that. And to see that come to fruition when I think that things are moving slowly, I just look back over that and
Right.
say, look at all these things that even people that were trying to help you get this accomplished said wasn't possible. And it just goes to show that anything really is possible. And, you're a man of faith, I'm a man of faith. And when you put your faith with that, it's unstoppable. And I love it. Um, one of the things that I've heard about the state of Ohio, and we talked a little bit about this yesterday, is that Ohio is the best state for services. Now, we're one of the best. Where I came from in Indiana, I know that's true. because I had next to nothing in Indiana. I had like maybe a few hours of services a week to now where I get around the clock care and I'm able to go places and all that stuff. Um, but do you think if Ohio, you talked about, 88 counties have 88 different ways of doing things. Do you think if
Right.
Ohio wasn't run by county boards, that maybe we could move a little bit smoothly, or is it a little bit more smoothly, or is it best that we're one of, I think, 16 states that are still run by county boards?
I'm not even sure if there's 16. Um,
Really? Okay.
right. It's very few that are run um, by a local board. So your local board gives a local flavor and knows the things that are important in that community. And I'm not sure how that would look. I know that in some respects it might be better. In some respects, it might be a lot worse. The equity of the funding, I think, is where you would see the biggest change. Some of our counties that are very well-to-do tax-wise, they never have to worry about a levy.
Mhm.
Um, we have in our county where I live, I'm never had to worry about a levy passing, and they are very good at monitoring their budget and have not had to go for a levy for many years and running on old levies, which means old dollars. So not the
Right.
new tax valuations. Um, and if they would go back out for like a renewal right now, it would bring in more money. Even at the same level, it would bring in more money because it gets into the new tax valuations and what the values are of the homes and the land. So I don't know. There are some counties here in Ohio that maybe are struggling financially in many different ways, and their county boards have not been able to pass a levy. So if you did away with that type of funding and took it all the way to the state level, and the state divvies out the monies, it might look a lot different. Um, but that local flair would be gone. So I really don't know what that would look like. Um, but yeah, I mean, you bring up that Ohio has the best services, and I get calls all the time from families, and I hear about how horrible Florida is. And then I got a call the other day saying, "Hey, we moved up here from Florida. We got all kinds of great things in Florida, and we get nothing here in Ohio."
Right.
So I really can't get a grasp on who does it well. But I know that, we have a unique situation in the state of Ohio where most of the other states, the Board of Developmental Disabilities or the Department of Developmental Disabilities is under another agency.
Yeah.
And in Ohio, that's a cabinet level position. So Director Houck reports to Governor DeWine,
Hmm.
and whoever the governor would be, that director reports directly to them as a cabinet level position, which gives a little bit of different flair to what we do in Ohio. Now, the department, you know, people people love it or hate it, but they're the ones that come up with the rules. One of the great things about it is that they open those rules up to public opinion.
Yeah.
Uh, so you can testify on it. You can say, you can write a letter. You could be on one of the committees that looks into how should things change in Ohio, what works, what doesn't work. So we do have some say there. And as we're advocating, um, I know most people right now are thinking about federal issues. They're worried about Medicaid changes or Social Security changes and
Hmm.
those type of things. But there are issues at the state level as well. And I get asked almost every day, what can I do? And the biggest thing is, like you said, you were told that you couldn't do this, do that. You advocated for yourself.
Yeah,
And you have done a really good job with, knowing who to talk to. Um, you talk to the cream of the crop a lot. Yeah.
I do. Yes.
When the new director came in, I was talking about having a meeting at the director's office, and you're like, "Oh yeah, well I'm meeting with her tomorrow." I'm like, "Oh my gosh!"
Yeah. Yeah.
And the new county board superintendent, you'd already, as soon as that person was named in your county, you were on it. And I encourage people to be a part of those changes, to advocate. We put out call to actions a lot on our website, on Facebook, and some social media. Um, get involved. So even at the federal level, there are ways that we can write to our senators. We just got back a few weeks ago from Washington, D.C. Not everybody gets the chance to do that, but they have local offices, and those aides in the local offices will give them the information. One of the things that we noticed when we were advocating in DC is a lot of these new legislators don't have a clue about the issues within the developmental disability field. And at first note, people said, I mentioned that to somebody, I think it was yesterday or the day before. And they said, well, why not? That should have been day one. You should have been ready to go. But they have hundreds of issues, and they only know the issues that are brought to their attention. So if it's an educational issue, yeah, you may have a bunch of teachers, you may have principals, you may have superintendents of local boards of education, you may have local board of education members. You've got your state agencies talking about these issues, and education is a huge thing. And then here we are, and we're like, okay, yeah, that's education in general, but let's talk about special education. Let's talk about the segregation of students, and they're not seeing that. They're not seeing that because we're not possibly speaking up loud enough. Um, in DC, and I'm joking about this, but in DC, somebody asked me what's the feel of Ohio, the arc of Ohio and people first. What is the feel? Well, we have a special day at Cedar Point every year, and I got a lot more comments and, hey, can I get free tickets for that? Than I did about, hey, I'm concerned about my Social Security, or I'm worried about my Medicaid right now. So I think there needs to be a lot of education as to what the topic is and how we can actually advocate for more than a free ticket to Cedar Point.
Right.
It's these people's lives we're talking about, not just a fun day in an amusement park. So that's one thing. I just really think people should get more involved in advocating.
Well, and I think too that there needs to be more education exclusively on the local level because I told you, in our pre-call that I was really frustrated with an event that I went to at the beginning of April, and it was all focused on one person, you know, uh,
Mhm.
Donald Trump this, he better not do this. And to be honest with you, he's not thinking about us right now. Uh, we're probably one of the last groups on his priority list. Where we need to focus is our local level because they're the ones that can talk to the higher ups and say, okay, this is what their concerns are and how, if any effect, is the presidential office going to have any say in this. And I tell people
But
all
I think
the time,
I think it's important to do all local, state, and federal at the same time.
yeah, yeah. Well, and I tell people all the time, those who are so worried that, the president's going to wake up one day and just take away Medicaid. No president, no matter who they are, no matter what party they're a part of, can do that. They can wake up and tout that all day long, but they're going to be caught with hell have no fury once they try. I mean,
Exactly.
all the executive orders that are in court right now and being shot down one after another. The president, no matter who they are, just has no unfettered power. They can't just wake up and say, I'm going to change this part of the world and nobody can do anything about it.
Right.
So that's what I try to get my disabled friends to understand and get your focus off of your dislike for one particular person. And
Exactly.
this goes for either party. Okay, I'm preaching to both
It
parties.
does.
And once we get our focus off of how much of a disdain we have for one particular party or one particular person, that's when America can come together and really initiate the change that needs to be done. And the reason why people with disabilities have what do you say? Lackluster service.
Lackluster. Yeah.
Look, yeah, whatever. I'm a public speaker and I can't get it together today. Sorry. But one of the reasons why our services are so meager is because we have no problem complaining about it, but we don't become a part of the solution and say, okay,
Right.
well, these are the problems I see. What about if we do this instead of just saying, don't take away my Medicaid, don't take away my Social Security? Those are shoestrings anyway. You have so many you have so many do's and don'ts on Social Security and Medicaid. One of my goals
Right.
is trying to get off of it all. I know that may not be possible for a lot of people with disabilities. And so we do need to make changes so that we can still have a life that's well meaning and be able to go on vacation and do those things. Because politicians can take our money and go on vacation. Why can't we take a little bit of our money that we've earned because we're disabled and go on vacation
Well,
too? You know?
yeah, that's a good point. I mean, if we advocate politically and they need to hear the true issues, but I'm like you. I think that we need to provide solutions as well. So, one of the solutions, a lot of people were struggling with stable accounts. The accounts here in Ohio under the ABLE Act that you can save money and put that in so it doesn't count against your resources. So, a lot of people were saying, I don't want to put money in there for my daughter or my son because when something happens and they die, that all goes back to the state.
Yeah.
This is my personal money that I'm putting in there, possibly, or for grandparents. They're saying, "Hey, I don't want to buy a bunch of junk for a holiday, for your birthday or whatever. So I'm going to put some in there for your stable account." Well, then, if that person would pass away, then the state would take that back. Now, we've not heard of really any cases where the state does that, but it was the way it was designed. So right now we're advocating, and it's changing to where it's called a clawback, where the government claws that money back and takes it at the end. Now they're not going to be able to do that. That's going to be, I believe that's in the state budget where they're changing the language, and stable accounts won't be able to do that. It goes back, you pick a beneficiary, and when you pass away, this person gets your estate, and that estate is your stable account. So
Well, another
that
issue
was
I've had with that too, Craig, is that I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm sorry.
okay. Go ahead.
Um, Another issue that I've had with that, Craig, is I used to have a stable account. I think when they first came in, and now you said it shouldn't count against your resources. Now, when you go for a recertification for Social Security, Or when you go for food stamps, they ask you about your able account. They've done that for me. Do you have an able account? Do you have
Hmm.
so if that doesn't matter, why, at least in my case, is Social Security or SNAP or JFS asking whether or not I have an able account?
It's interesting. I'll have to look into that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
It's like we're talking about advocating for these political things that we need. And like you say, it's not one party or the other. Both parties need to understand. All of the politicians need to understand. Years ago, I was in Washington, D.C. for what was called the Alliance for Full Participation. And there were people from all over the country there. We used to meet like every 5 years. And it was when President Obama was in office, and one of his Health and Human Services folks, I believe it was the director, was there speaking, and then was able to take questions and mentioned that not a lot goes on with developmental disabilities because nobody reaches out about it. And they said, "Well, how do we reach out?" And they said, "Well, on the website." On the White House website, there was this little tab clear over in the corner under Health and Human Services, and you were to go down and find disabilities and click on that. Well, it didn't get a lot of clicks. So obviously things were going well. And the moderator said, well, and at that time, not everybody had a computer or a smartphone. At that time, she says, how am I going to access that? I don't make enough money to have a decent computer to get on your website. How can I complain to you if that's what you're seeing? So they took that information back to the White House and said, "Hey, we got a whole group of people here that feel that they're not being heard because these are the metrics that we're looking at. This is what we're seeing. We don't see a lot of clicks on that website. We don't see a lot of likes, or we don't see."
mhm.
So we do need to do a better job of how we advocate. Like you say, everybody complains about services, but who are we complaining to? Are we complaining to the right people? And are we offering solutions with that? Something to think about.
Yeah, it definitely is. It definitely is. Where do you see, what are some of your fears before we wrap up? Where do you see, because we talked a little bit today about the direct support professional crisis, what are some changes that need to be made to prevent it from getting worse? And what are some fears that you have with that if changes aren't made?
I fear that if changes aren't made, it is going to get worse. It is going to be very difficult to find quality trained staff that are going to stay around. And I believe that one of the ways that we can tackle that is through our community colleges, through our career technical centers. There are some kids that say, absolutely not. I do not want to go to college, but I love these programs at the career technical centers. So they go in and they learn welding, which is a very good paying job. Lots of jobs out there. They learn one of the things that Governor DeWine was pushing here. I even mentioned it to him. Um, right now, food processing is important, and learning the art of butchering. And I know that that's not going to be great for some people, but um, that's something that they're considering bringing into the career technical centers. Meat packing companies would love that. And we do have some CTCs that offer a training in healthcare. Why not pop in a wide variety of developmental disabilities there as well? Okay, this week we're going to learn about Fragile X. This week, we're going to learn about spina bifida. This week, we're going to learn about cerebral palsy. This week, we're
Yeah.
going to learn about autism. This week, we're going to learn, you know, is where I'm going. We can use those educational opportunities to introduce people into this field. I taught at a local community college, and we used to have a developmental disabilities class, and not a lot of push was on it. It was just one class as part of a social work program. But I always got one or two students in every one of those classes that said, I never considered this as a field. I want to do that. So in my position, I was hiring my students. I was hiring the ones that I knew did a good job, um,
Wow.
had a passion for it. And many of them, you know, from 16 years ago are still in the field today, working in the developmental disabilities field. I think we need to get into the colleges. One of the issues that we're seeing now, though, is a lot of those degree programs are going away. As I said before, we've taken education and gone by the wayside and said we don't need that anymore. However, it introduced this field to so many people when we offered those classes. It fed the program. It fed our need for people in
Hmm.
various positions. Toledo, the University of Toledo had a major program in the study of developmental disabilities. It has been removed, along with probably 8 others. I don't remember exactly how many. They removed multiple. A lot of people aren't going for higher education right now. So we go back to the career technical centers. We we encourage our providers of services,
Hmm.
those agency providers mostly, to set up at local job fairs at high schools to show it
Yes.
as an actual thing that you can do. Um, I was invited one time and set up in our local school, and the teachers were walking by saying, I don't know why we never did this before. That is a perfect thing. I had students coming up to me saying, hey, my uncle has Down syndrome, and I love hanging out with him. I love taking him different places. You mean that there's a job there for me, that I could do that and make friends and work with other folks with disabilities? Absolutely. Here's a
Yeah.
number. Give me a call.
Yeah.
It's we need to do a better job at making it a career path again, instead of, oh, hey, we need somebody and you start tomorrow? I mean, we do that at McDonald's, we do that at Burger King and Arby's. We hire people on the spot with little training, and we need to make it a career path again.
Yeah, we do. And I'm just gonna say it's been when you find the right provider, it will really, really change your life. Because I've had a great provider since August of this year. And for the first time, August of last year, excuse me, we haven't had August yet, dear God. uh, August of last year, I found a really great provider. And, for the first time in 10 years, I was able to leave the state of Ohio and go for my best friend's dad's funeral. Now, I didn't, that's a terrible thing to go for. But the
Right.
fact that I was able to be there for him
Absolutely.
at a time in need, because so many people with disabilities I know I struggle with, who am I giving back to? Who am I pouring into? Because I'm needing so much of other people. And the fact
Right.
that I was able to call my provider up on a Monday and say, guess what? We need to go to a funeral on Friday. You know, the simple fact that the resources were there and that I was able to do that because of the provider I chose, and they really have a passion for it. It really changed my life this past year in a way. Now I believe that even more things are possible, because for so many
Absolutely.
years I was told, no, this is not possible. You, yeah, we have transportation, but you know, taking you out of state, is a whole different thing. I didn't have that with this provider. My provider said, "We will make it happen. Tell me what time I need to be there. Tell me what time you need to be there, and we'll make it happen." And that's the type of things that you can do once you stop looking at the size of the paycheck. And yes, we know you need to feed your family. We know you need to support, your loved ones, and a lot of caregivers are single parents, and I get that, and God bless you. But once you start realizing how much you can change somebody's life, even though the vision of the paycheck is important, it gets smaller and you really begin to see the bigger picture. And so we really do need to make it a career again. I totally agree with you. What final advice would you give to somebody new that's coming into this field, and maybe somebody that's burnt out that's been in it for 30 years?
If you're burnout, find another avenue. I've as I mentioned, I have worked in many different capacities within the same field. Um, find that one thing within the field that you want to change to. Like I said, I've gone from direct care to community integration. Um, worked with transition students. I am a person that thrives on change. And if you're willing to take the step and to stretch yourself, you're not going to get bored. So I would look at it as if I'm getting into this field, that it is not something that's going to be the same every day. If that's what you're looking for, you need to go work in a factory because you know that machine is
Yeah.
kicking out the same stuff. You've got the same exact job every day. If you are somebody like me that likes a new challenge, um, and you like to stretch yourself, jump into the field wholeheartedly, because it's going to change. Everything's going to be different. Now, I don't always appreciate the changes with policy every year, but it is hard to keep up sometimes. But it is a field that is wide open, and it's something that it is worthwhile. It is something that changes your life. It has changed my whole family's lives. And the way they look at both my daughters are dental hygienists, and when somebody comes in with a developmental disability, they kind of volunteer to help, and they go, "Hey, I want to do this. I want to do this," because they grew up with hanging out with everybody and volunteering and helping out in many different ways. So it changes your whole family. It's the dynamics are amazing.
Yeah, they really are. I totally agree with you. Craig, thank you so much for joining me. It's been fun.
Thanks for inviting me. It was neat.
It's been fun. It's been informative. We talked a lot today about a lot of different things. But one thing I want people to take away is we have to get both parties involved. And, if you're out there listening, Republican, Democrat, if you're a senator, if you're a congressman, I invite you to come on the show and talk about your passion with people with disabilities, talk about changes you're trying to see. I have the mantra of speak up, speak out, and speak loud. Let's do it, because the people who speak up and speak out and speak loud the most are the ones that get the most done. And if we're going to initiate big change in the disabled community, it's going to take a lot of speaking up, a lot of speaking out, and a lot of speaking loud. So please do that. Anyone who's in Congress wants to come on the show, I cordially invite you. And anyone in the disabled community. Craig, thank you so much for being on the show. You guys, make sure you get the book, Trailblazing and Transforming, 12 Amazing Stories of Disabled Entrepreneurship. That's a title I'm making up. I think that's pretty close, but it is trailblazing and transforming. So make sure you check that out. Link will be in the show notes. This is the Nick Speaks podcast, the podcast dedicated to the disabled community where we speak up, speak out, and speak loud about the issues that matter to the disabled the most. We will see you next week. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.